We were just having a little bit. So, hello everybody. Welcome to today's webinar by donation across the ocean. How Slovaks settled in America, how Slovaks helped to contribute to the building and shaping of the American dream. We're going to be covering several key Slovak American personalities. They were first generation Slovak Americans, the descendants of the great migration wave pioneers that traveled across the ocean in search of hope, in search of opportunity, and ultimately in search of a new country and settling in the new world and becoming American citizens or at least residents. But before we dive into that, I just want to go over to the next slide and show you the beautiful cover of Across the Ocean. Gabby, are you able to move it, or would you like me to share the screen?
It should be moved now. Can you not see it?
No, it's just showing the beginning, the opening of the webinar poster. That's okay. I can share a screen. It's no problem. I was saying earlier we were having a little bit of technical difficulties. Okay, perfect. Yes, we're there.
There?
So yes,
Good.
but it's not showing the full screen. It's showing the PowerPoint with the thumbnails on the left. No?
Sorry, I don't think I will be able to do anything about that.
Okay, no problem.
Yes.
So would you like me to share the screen instead?
Try.
Okay.
I'm canceling mine.
Okay. Okay, are you guys able to see the screen?
We are, but it's not on full screen.
Okay, now? Yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Good.
perfect. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our latest and sixth book. What makes this book unique is that it's the first time that Gabriella and I venture into writing fiction. It's a historical fiction. We went into this arena or into this new genre because we really wanted to bring the Slovak migration story that much closer to the diaspora community, as well as Slovaks here in Slovakia. And we felt that if it was told through this engaging narrative of this family and the saga that they go through and relocating and eventually settling in the United States, it would make it that much more relatable to the reader, that much more fun to read. We had the pleasure of creating Slovak Settlers with some of you actually on this call. That's a tremendous production. It's 800 pages long. It covers 44 different family stories of that period, of the Great Migration period. But that's really for someone who I would say is already quite passionate about the topic, who would like to learn more from the journeys of other families. But in order to really bring this story to the masses and popularize the Slovak migration story, Gabriela and I put our brains together, created this mastermind, and we decided that in order to take that next step of bridge building that migration story, popularizing that migration story with a wider audience, we will need to go beyond our comfort zone and write our first historical novel. Gabby, would you like to comment some about the journey of writing this book?
Well, first of all, warm welcome to everybody from me too. Lovely to be here with you today. And wonderful, and what a pleasure and privilege to have to introduce our new book to you. You will see the beautiful artwork throughout our presentation today, and you will see just how this fictional story of one family is actually built on rigorous academic research and real facts, real histories, and real life events. It has been long in the making, I should say. As Zuzana said, this is our first novel. We are experienced popular history writers, but this one was a new challenge to dive into for us, and we're very excited to see the book coming into fruition.
Indeed. And of course, this book would not be possible without Rebecca's wonderful contribution as the illustrator on the project. Rebecca is joining us from London. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I know that you're right now at a restaurant, but just do share a little bit about that journey of what it was like creating the beautiful and powerful illustrations that you made for this project.
So hi everyone. I hope you can hear me well. If there is a little bit of a background noise, I apologize. It's very busy in here in the restaurant. So yeah, just to chime in a little bit about the illustrations. It was a great journey. I was really excited when the ladies asked me to illustrate the book because it's a topic that's like very, very close to my heart. Obviously, some of my ancestors went to America as well to, be able to provide a better life for my family, for their children, for their grandchildren, for me as well, effectively. So yeah, it was a topic very, very close to my heart, and I just loved playing around with creating these amazing images of Juraj and Anna, like to bring their story to life, to kind of share the true emotions behind this difficult decision to actually, undertake that journey and get on the boat and sail to a whole new country that they didn't know anything about. So for me, it was like very, very strong experience to create them, to create the characters. I was inspired by our beautiful folk costumes, by our beautiful Slovak kroje. So there's a lot of Slovak folk motifs in what they're wearing, some elements that go with them throughout the whole journey, like Juraj's hat, for example, which is a traditional Slovak klobuk or kalap, a very big black woolen head, and he keeps that throughout the whole journey with him, even in America. So it's that kind of like a nod to our culture, our ancestors, and how we keep our Slovak traditions with us, even if we go somewhere else in the world. So yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca. Indeed, her artwork is very detailed. You can capture a little glimpse of that on the cover that you see here for Across the Ocean, the beautiful motifs of the kroj, the details. It's also another way to popularize the clothing of Slovakia and Slovak elements. For those that are maybe generations removed from Slovakia, as they connect to the story that will often resemble the story of their forefathers or their family members. And Rebecca is absolutely correct in saying the Great Migration experience really almost affects every other family in Slovakia. Rebecca has family members that went through this journey. My own great-grandfather was a bird of passage. That means he went to America not once, but twice to work in the coal mines and steel mills. And Gabrielle is actually greeting us today from a house that was built in Záhorie in Western Slovakia, in a small little village, by a Slovak that returned from America. There's a special term for these Slovaks that return to America. What are they called, Gabby?
They're called Americani, and though most Slovaks, or the vast majority of Slovak immigrants in the United States, left from Eastern Slovakia, this phenomenon indeed affected the entire country. And here in the very west of the country, we do see the stories repeat themselves of people leaving behind everything that they knew to pursue their dreams and hopes of better life in America. Most of those people, they did not initially plan to stay in the United States or wherever they went. They intended to earn the money, to earn $1,000 and return home. But because life happened, two world wars happened, not everybody was able to do that. But the gentleman who built my house was. He returned after or during or probably immediately after the First World War into newly created Czechoslovakia, and invested the money that he earned in America into building a brand new fancy house, which was much bigger than all the other houses in the village. But perhaps we can move through the slides to give everybody the taste of the beautiful artwork that Rebecca created for this project.
Indeed. Thank you, Gabriella. So we're just going to do a quick overview of the Great Migration story. So as we know, why did so many of our forefathers emigrate to the United States? In fact, it was some 1/3 of the Slovak nation that did this great leap to the New World. So Slovakia was a population then of some 2.2 million Slovaks, ethnic Slovaks that lived on the territory of Upper Hungary, Royal Hungary. And we know that some 750,000 of them actually journeyed to the New World. So that's a tremendous percentage, a tremendous chunk of the population, actually over 1/3. We know that not all settled in the New World, but there was a 1920 US census that said some 620,000 Slovaks were living in the United States. In fact, Slovaks after the Irish were the largest emigrating population, or second largest after the Irish, of Europeans to the New World. So what was the pull factor that drew so many Slovaks out to journey across this vast ocean and to settle on a new continent? So, of course, we know that there was extreme poverty in Slovakia. Slovakia, or Upper Hungary at that time, was not industrialized. It was experiencing delayed industrialization. There was poor railway connections, if at all. There was poverty. There was overpopulation. There was large Slovak families, and the lands were being divided amongst more and more children that were surviving childhood, also thanks to the potato, thanks to improving life and social conditions. But all of a sudden, you have this abundance of children that become adults, and less and less and less, smaller and smaller parcels of land to be divided amongst them. That meant less and less land to farm on, and therefore sustain their own families, their own wives and children. At the same time, across the ocean, you had an industrial revolution taking root. You had the big families, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, etc., really setting out with the vision to build a new America, to connect it via rail, to build industry, to build skyscrapers, to build new cities. And for that, they needed, of course, engineers, and they needed capital, but they needed resources, they needed coal, and they needed human beings, they needed workers. Now, in the conditions in the United States, a lot of the jobs that were at the bottom of the social hierarchy, the dirty, dangerous, and dull jobs, for example, were conducted by the Irish. But we know that the Irish over time began to democratize, they began to form unions, they began to make demands to the captains of industry, asking for better conditions, for improved safety conditions, and for higher wages. Now, the captains of industry at that time, they were so focused on the vision of building America that they had no time, no interest, or I wouldn't say moral compass, but at that time, human life, or the individual life, was seen as more expendable than it is, thankfully, today. So they denied the demands of the Irish to improve working conditions, to improve their wages, to increase their wages. And they set their sights on a new pool of labor, a new pool of abundant, relatively obedient, hardworking, cheap labor, and that labor was in deprived regions of Europe, in Central and Eastern Europe. And of course, Slovakia was one of the regions that was targeted by these American agents that would travel to villages all over the country, especially in the eastern part. As Gabriela said, the vast majority of people left from the east, coming into towns and basically seducing the villagers, seducing the local farmers or peasants, and selling to them this American dream via the call of the American emperor. So at the time, Slovakia was part of the Kingdom of Hungary and the Empire of Austria-Hungary, and the highest status on the land was the status of the emperor. So in order to somehow entice the villagers with this opportunity, they said there was the call of the American emperor. Of course, the American emperor didn't exist, but he said he was calling upon the people from the villages. He was calling upon the people of rural Slovakia to come to the New World to help him collect the nuggets of gold that were rolling on the streets. So this was the call to entice the masses through You could say it was a soft campaign. You could say it was a manipulation. You could say it was marketing. You could say it was just recruiters coming in trying to source workers. But what started as a trickle of men, and as we know, it's the men, of course, went first, slowly and very quickly evolved into a stream, and then I would say a gushing river, and ultimately what became American fever. Gabby, would you like to comment on the American fever?
And before we even do that, so it's in this time and in this context that our story across the ocean and the saga of Juraj Sobota and his family begins in Eastern Slovakia. They struggle making a living. They face the hardships caused by two failed harvests. They have two little children. And so they know that another failed harvest would compromise not just their well-being but their lives and indeed the future of their children. And so that difficult decision is made to leave Slovakia for the promise of America, because Juraj in a local pub on one cold winter evening meets one such gentleman, a silver-tongued agent who persuades him to give America a try. And indeed, just as Juraj left countless Slovak men, and did not take long for women to start leaving too, to the extent that many villages in eastern Slovakia were emptied of first just able-bodied, strong men, but then of women and children as well. Simultaneously, as those villages in eastern Slovakia especially was being emptied, the communities, Slovak communities and neighborhoods in America grew, prospered, and rose. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. And get back to the story of Juraj and Anna. Would you like to give a little peek of?
Sure. So actually here we see another beautiful illustration by Rebecca. Here we see Anna Sobota with the two children, Maria and Jakub, as they're traveling across the ocean. Now, we don't want to give too much of the story away, but we'll give a few signposts. Meanwhile, actually, Rebecca, are you still on the call with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, maybe. Okay, perfect. Because maybe if you could, because Gabby's not able to share, is actually to share the link to the Kickstarter campaign where people.
Oh, that's okay. I have that ready. I have it ready.
You have it. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
okay,
I do.
You have
I
it.
do.
Okay.
I managed to
Because
catch
as
up.
I'm sharing, I'm not able. So here you have a illustration of beautiful Anna. And we really wanted to bring a beauty into the story. Of course, Slovak women or Slavic women are known and celebrated for their beauty. So Anna is an embodiment of that, of the beautiful cheekbones and the slender figure, but also all the positive traits that Slovak women have, which is hard work ethic, which is devotion, which is that mother bear instinct to protect the children, but also to protect the family. And what we have that happens in Across the Ocean story, that the Sobota story really mirrors the Great Migration saga of the majority of Slovaks. As I said, the men went first. Juraj was one of the first wave of men to depart across the ocean. Actually, Juraj was not educated. He was illiterate, as were most Slovaks from villages at that time. So he had no idea that he would be actually journeying across the ocean. When America was presented to him, it was presented to him as a destination that was certainly removed, but it was to be somewhere on the other side of the Tatra Mountains. Now, indeed, Juraj did somewhat travel across the Tatra Mountains into Poland, but that's when his journey with the coyotes, with the, let's say, those that moved, the illegal migrants, of course, Juraj becoming one of them, across the territories, across the different empires, in order to get to Bremen, Germany, and travel by boat for the first time to this new world, this America, where he actually exited the boat wearing his kroj. And what happened to him, Gabby?
And Juraj lands in America, and he's excited. He goes through the gates of Ellis Island, successfully passing all the trials and tribulations along the way, including the health control by the U.S. Immigration Office. And he's all excited to put on his kroj to really mark this new chapter in his life, and perhaps the greatest achievement in his life so far, having made it so far beyond the borders of his village and his family. So he puts on the kroy that was handmade for him, and that makes him feel more home, instills him with confidence, and after all, he represents his village and his homeland in a faraway world. But the reaction that he's met with by the local Americans, it's not what he expected. Though our hero's arrival in America is not as dramatic, people simply don't understand the costume. It looks like an attire of Native Americans, so they laugh at him or view him with suspicion. This little element of the story is actually built on a true event that happened at the end of the 19th century to a group of Slovak immigrants who walked from New York to their destination in New Jersey because they didn't have enough money for the train, wearing the kroje, and they were actually shot at and chased out of town with pebbles because people there were scared that the native inhabitants of the country were coming back to reclaim their land. So that's how difficult the beginnings in the new country, in the promised land was. It was far from what the agents promised, far from streets paved with gold, and far from easy access to big money.
Certainly very far from easy access to big money. And I'm just responding to a comment in the chat. So I did refer to them as an illegal migrant. Now, I just want to differentiate. So when they came through Ellis Island, they were no longer illegal. They went through certain immigration controls. At the time, United States was open to migrants coming from Europe into America for the purposes of work. Where they had some controls was that they would go through a health exam and a kind of checkup, I guess, also to check like the mental well-being, mental state. Obviously, immigration control didn't want to let in people that were schizophrenic or had syphilis. So there was a preliminary check, but that was only, I would say, a very, very fast checkup because at Ellis, during this time, during the peak of the Great Migration from Europe to America, some 30 million Europeans relocated this way. And 2,000 people went through Ellis Island on average per day during this peak period. However, where Juraj was illegal was in the fact that for Slovaks to be able to leave the kingdom, they had to get an exit visa or an exit permit. Now, this was very, very difficult to obtain. Obviously, the Kingdom of Hungary didn't want to lose its men, also for the purposes of defending the kingdom, for the purposes of military draft. So they would deny or just not give out these exit permits to young men that wanted to leave. So they had, and in addition to that, they would also not be able to give out passports, or they would find reasons why to deny people passport. Passport was a much needed document to travel across borders and enter other kingdoms, enter Poland, enter Germany. So there was a network of what we would call, I guess, coyotes today, which were smugglers, human smugglers that knew the route, knew who to pay off when, in order to help these masses of men leave the Kingdom of Hungary and travel across parts of Europe on their way to Bremen, Germany. This included ducking through the forest, hiding out in the forest, and also, of course, through corruption, being able to pay off border patrol agents so that they would look the other way when these men boarded the trains. One more question in the chat. If you do want to buy this book and send it to multiple addresses, unfortunately, the Kickstarter platform is set up that way that you purchase a book and you put one single destination address. So if you want to buy multiple books, I believe there's a 5-book option. You can have them shipped to your US address and then from the US redistribute it to your family members in other states if you would like. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So here, Gabby, would you like to lead this one?
Yes, so as we already said so many times today, people started leaving Slovakia, then Upper Hungary in the Kingdom of Hungary in droves. first it was hundreds, then it was thousands, then it was hundreds of thousands, and simultaneously, of course, with those departures and the increased arrivals, of course, the communities in the United States grew. Slovaks tended to stay together, settle in the same neighborhoods, just as other immigrants from other parts of Europe. And with women starting to join the men, like men either returned to the old country to find brides, sent for the wives and children if they already had them, and if they managed to accumulate enough money for their steamship tickets, or if they were single, they were looking for partners, future partners in crime in the community, in the Slovak community. There was a strong preference to marry another Slovak, or if you were a Rusin, marry another Rusin. This is how important it was for the immigrants from Slovakia to maintain their identity and to kind of maintain the semblance and the presence of the old country, even in the new land that they were in. Susie, did you want to add something?
Yes, just wanted to add something that it was actually very, very uncommon and actually shunned upon for the Slovak migrants to marry outside of the Slovak community. It was shunned upon to marry someone that was even Polish or Ukrainian, and it was absolutely shunned upon to marry outside of the region. So to marry an Irish, although there were some Slovak and Irish intermarriages, and we definitely covered some of those stories, or Slovak-Italian intermarriages in Slovak settlers. But this, for the most part, until World War II, was very, very rare. The Slovak community was pretty, I would say, orthodox in terms of intermarrying between themselves. And where we really saw that shift, as Gabriela mentioned, in terms of really starting to put foundations down in the New World, is when men and women joined, married, and started to birth children. And with that first Slovak American generation born in the United States, that really changed the game in terms of being focused on saving money as quickly as possible, and returning back to the old country to buy more farmland, more animals, and live a better life as a rich farmer. All of a sudden, the children were here, and somehow that dream, although it never faded, they all wanted to return. Majority wanted to return. All of a sudden they had children here, so somehow things started to be more prolonged, and we see this pattern happening actually in current migration trends. We're seeing that once migrants settle in a new country, marry, and start to birth a new generation in Germany, in England, in the United States, we see that their return mobility becomes a lot less likely and pushed now to retirement age.
Absolutely. And so with the arrival of women first and then children, the needs of the communities change. At the beginning, we started off with just single men. All they needed was a workplace, a place to sleep, which is usually a boarding house, often run by their own compatriots from the old country, by the ladies from Upper Hungary. And then they needed a pub or a saloon to drown their sorrows in cheap whiskey. But once women arrived on the scene, once children were born, there was a entirely different focus in their world. So we see the erection of the first Slovak churches. That was a top priority. People wanted to pray and confess in their own language. So they did all they could. They made miracles happen to build those Slovak churches and to bring in priests from the old country to be able to serve the community. Alongside churches, we see the erection of first schools to educate the next generation about being Slovak or Rusin, to make sure that that next generation remembers where their roots are and where they came from, because most of these children attended American schools indeed during the week to learn English, to advance in their lives. That's what their parents wanted. But the parents were kind of torn in between. Like, we want our children to have a better future and to be Americans, but we don't want them to forget where they came from and where their ancestors came from. So on weekends, parents sent children to Slovak weekend schools to practice their Slovak, to learn about history, culture, customs of Slovakia, to wear their kroje, to perform the dances and songs, etc. So there were churches, there were schools, there were fraternals, of course. We won't go too deep into that topic, but these organizations were first created to ensure men who worked in dangerous conditions. So in case a minor passed, his family would be looked after. But those developed into fully fledged organizations in their own rights, kind of like the gatekeepers of Slovak culture and of Slovak identity on the American soil. And they would organize events. They educated the members of the community, teaching them how to read, how to write, teaching them to read, to write, teaching them English, teaching them maths. So these illiterate immigrants could advance themselves and eventually get better jobs and do better in life overall. So all of this was kicking off at the end of the 19th century. And all of this momentum and excitement is also reflected in the book Across the Ocean. We won't reveal too much, but Juraj himself is lucky enough to have a Slovak church in his neighborhood that offers much solace, the needed guidance in times when things were difficult. I mean, it's hard to imagine for us today to leave our families for an unknown length of time, not having any contact with them besides letters for those who learn to write, and working 12-hour shifts, barely seeing the light of the day. So these men really needed that safety net that the church and the community provided. Here in the slide, we are featuring a photo from Arkansas, Slovak town, today just known as Slovak. This is not a haphazard choice of an image. Our story Across the Ocean starts in Eastern Slovakia, then moves through Pittsburgh and down into Arkansas, where it ends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we don't, as we say, keep saying, we don't want to give too much of the story away, but Arkansas and Slovak town, Slovak as it's known today, certainly play a very important role in the Juraj and Anna story. We really wanted to also popularize the destination of Arkansas for the Slovak readership, as well as the American readership, because what we ourselves didn't know that Slovak town existed until only a couple of years ago. We've had the pleasure to visit the community not once, but twice. We've been really awestruck by the strength of that community, by their success as farmers, but also by their strong faith and pride in their Slovak heritage and in their Slovak farming heritage, which is not something that has been preserved in other communities, not to this extent, and certainly not to this strong connection with farming culture. And farming plays such an important role in Slovakia, and it certainly played such an important role 120 years ago when this great migration was kicking off. Most of our ancestors were small plot farmers, and actually most of them wanted to continue farming, but when they came to work in the coal mines and steel mills of Pittsburgh, they were absorbed into urban life, and that was very much a shock for them. They were never used to living in urban cities. They were always used to working and tilling the land for generations upon generations, and all of a sudden, like Juraj, they were deep in shafts underground working in the coal mines, and later Juraj also had the experience of working in the steel mill, so in the scorching heat, as Gabriela mentioned, 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. And so what we witnessed, and this is a historical fact, was a kind of rebellion movement when the intelligentsia of the communities, of the Slovak American immigrant communities came together, and they really began to ponder the fate of the Slovak man, the Slovak woman in America. And that's where we saw the emergence of the campaign Návrat k vidieku, the return to the country. So the return to the countryside, so to speak. And Arkansas became a destination for numerous reasons. There were some Czech migrants that had come to that region, to the Grand Prairie before, but also because it was a low cost in terms of acquisition of land. And so we definitely cover, and we're very proud to have covered this aspect of the Slovak migration journey that is so little known, but it's so remarkable in Across the Ocean. I don't know if you want to comment more on that, on the Arkansas twist of the book.
No,
Gabby?
we will leave that
No.
there. You will
Okay.
just need to get a copy. We have said it, but the campaign still runs for 2 more days. This is our fundraising pre-sale campaign. So by supporting this crowdfunding on Kickstarter, the links are in the chat, you directly contribute to the book actually becoming a reality. So all the support will go towards printing, design, and all the other bits and pieces that need to be done before a book is published. We have already met our target, so we're very happy. We're celebrating still. But you can still pre-order your copy at a special price. The book will be a little bit more expensive afterwards. But there is also an exciting opportunity for all of you who do have ancestors coming from Slovakia, which is all of you, I believe, to write your ancestral names into the book and thus into the history. So we will have a beautiful wall of gratitude in the book where we will place all these names to be remembered for posterity. So do check it out. There are many other rewards as well, from ebooks, audiobooks to hard copies to this. Honor your family name and others. So you have 2 more days to do that.
Indeed. So we have another 48 hours. That's part of the campaign. I just saw a comment that if you have supported us by securing the Wall of Gratitude donation, thank you very much for that. Gabriela and I will be contacting all patrons at the end of the campaign. So in the next 48 hours and beyond, to reach out to them so that we know what name to include. So don't worry about that. Kindly note that we will be including only one family name per Wall of Gratitude contribution. So if you want to include multiple or both sides of your grandparents' lineage, or please do make a double donation to the Wall of Gratitude. Of course, we also have cheaper options for those that are not able to make such a contribution or significant contribution to our campaign. So we have an audiobook. We've been sharing bits and pieces of that audiobook on our podcast all month, twice on Mondays and Fridays on the Global Slovakia podcast. I personally really like to listen to it because it's a very soothing story. I think you can really enjoy that. I think that's something like a $15 donation, or you can get an ebook. You'll get that obviously much sooner than the actual physical copy, but I do really recommend you support us by at least getting that physical copy. It's something that you can have in your library, you can have on your coffee table, you can share with your children, with your neighbors, with your community after you're done with it. So pass on the book, pass on across the ocean. And ultimately, I think the biggest offer we have in the options to support our campaign is actually dinner with Gabriela and I in Bratislava, or lunch, dinner or lunch, one of the 2 options, whatever is most convenient. So if you are traveling to Slovakia and would like to have dinner with the authors, that's another opportunity to support us via that Kickstarter platform. I think it's the last option. So now back to the story.
Yeah, let's quickly run through it.
Yeah. So I'm just going to now shift, because we know with the immigrant story, it's often the first generation or those our forefathers that come that don't speak the language. Perhaps they're illiterate. They have to take on the lowest, dirtiest, most dangerous jobs. Coal mines, steel mills in this case. We know that with the next generation being able to integrate more into American society, learning the English language, going to school, we start to see that socioeconomic shift and improvement, them getting much better jobs. And across the generations, we really see Slovak Americans making significant contribution to the American story. And Gabriela will be covering, I believe, 4 of the most famous, or some of the most famous Slovak American contributions to the American dream, to the building of America. So Gabby, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. So we'll very quickly run through this. We will be dedicating a special webinar to the history of Slovaks building the American dreams and helping to build America next year, when you, all our friends in the US, are celebrating an important anniversary. So you have much to look forward to. So for now, just a very quick run through some of the most illustrious immigrant stories and experiences. So we can move to the next slide, Susie. So the first one.
Sure.
Oh, yes, great. Is Stefan Murgas. Many of you might not be aware of this name, but we are hosting this webinar, and we're able to do much of our work and communicate across the ocean easily today also because of this gentleman. Stefan Murgas was a Catholic priest. He was very talented in technology, but also in art. But because he came from a humble background of a farmer, he couldn't study what he wanted. The only option for him to study was to follow the calling of becoming a priest, which he did. And then he left homeland at the end of the 19th century because the Hungarian authorities were implementing the policy of Magyarization. You will learn more about that also in the book, which was basically an attempt to turn all minorities living in the Kingdom of Hungary into Hungarians, including Slovaks, Rusyns, and others who lived on the Slovak territory. So Stefan was moved from vicarage to vicarage, from community to community. As a political move, he eventually grew tired of it and decided to try his luck in America, and he did, and he left in 1896 to serve the community in Wilkes-Barre. He became a priest there, but as well as serving the spiritual needs of the Slovak community in that part of the United States, he also set up a little laboratory at his vicarage, and he made significant improvements to the telegraph. At that time, the Morse code was being used, but it had its limitations. Stefan knew there must be a better way, and he succeeded. And it was in 1905, on a cold winter night, that he actually shared the first transmission, the first ever historic transition of human voice from Wilkes-Barre to Scranton, saying the famous words, "Do you hear me? Is anyone listening?" So that was the first words that were spoken in Slovak that were ever transmitted using wireless technology. Life is not always easy for Slovak immigrants or for anyone, and so this great invention of Stefan Murgas actually got lost in history because another man was credited with further improving this technology of wireless communication, and that gentleman, his name was Marconi, was also granted a US patent for this. He was given a prestigious contract by this government of the United States, so he earned quite a fair share of money of it. But even he said at the very beginning that this invention and all of what was happening was only possible thanks to Stefan Murgas. So in the end, Stefan received a patent, but he never got a Nobel Prize as he should have. That went to the other gentleman, Marconi. So what happened with Stefan Murgas was that he returned to Czechoslovakia after the First World War into the newly funded country, and he wanted to teach technology. But that didn't work out very well for him either because he lacked the credentials. So the man who invented one of the most groundbreaking inventions in history could not teach in Czechoslovakia, and he returned back to the United States, and that's where he died, and that's where he's buried. So next time, maybe you talk to somebody on the phone, you send a message, think of Stefan Murgas. We have him to thank for this wonderful opportunity that we have today. So Stefan Murgas, he lived at that critical time of history that we capture in the book, the end of 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. Next one. Thank you, Susie. Stefan Banic, some of you might be familiar with him. He's more famous. He was born in Western Slovakia. He worked at the farm of the Count Palfi near Smolenice. Those of you who visited Slovakia might know the beautiful fairy tale Smolenice Castle. So that's where this Stefan, another Stefan, worked at. But he was dismissed because of his opinions about the Apony laws. These were the educational laws that basically tried to do away with Slovak or any other language at schools in the Kingdom of Hungary and only use Hungarian. So being unable to work in his hometown, he too thought that he would give America a try. and he left again at the 19th century to work as a miner, then as a mason in one of those industrial centers in North America. But what was special about him was that he was fascinated by flying and by planes. He lived at the time that the brothers Wrights made that big successful first flight. They flew the first airplane without crashing and killing anybody, so that was great. But Stefan, being exposed to this also witnessed a plane crash at the beginning of the 20th century. And he, being a very inventive, very industrious, and technologically savvy man, as Slovaks often are, they were forced to be so by historic circumstances in which they lived, he decided that he would invent something that would help save the lives of these pilots. Now, this was in 1912. 1913, he constructed his first parachute and tested it by himself because nobody else was mad enough to jump out of a 41-story building. So Stefan took it upon himself to prove that his invention is functional. He jumped out of the building, he survived. The next year, he replicated the experiment by jumping out of the actual plane. And in 1914, he received a patent from the American government. But Stefan, he possibly could have turned this into a business success, but he just wanted his patent to do good. So he donated this patent to the American military to help save lives of military pilots. So this is a great story of how a Slovak left his homeland because he couldn't self-actuate himself there, invented something amazing in America, given the opportunities that America offered, and he gave back to this new homeland. So thanks to him, the invention of parachute could be used to save lives and to support pilots on their missions. Stefan too returned to Slovakia, and he actually died and is buried here. He also helped with excavating the only publicly accessible cave in Western Slovakia, and that's Drini. Let's move to the next one, very quick. Michael Strang, who raised the flag at Iwo Jima. He left Slovakia as a toddler. He's an example of someone who was taken to the United States by his mother. So first it was his father who left, then his mother, and this toddler joined him. Michael Strang is of Rusin descent. His parents were full-on Rusins, and Michael Strang, or their original surname was Strang, but as many other immigrants, the name got Americanized into Strang. That's how history remembers him. And Michael Strang was active in his military duty at the time of the Second World War. So though he was born in Slovakia, he was raised, educated, attended all the schools in the United States, and then he enlisted into the army and joined the Navy SEALs. He participated in the battles of the Second World War, taking part in the battles in the Pacific, and he was one of the servicemen who rose the American flag at Iwo Jima, one of the most iconic photographs of the 20th century and of the entire war. Sadly, Michael died a few days after, so he is an example of an immigrant who came in as a young child, benefited greatly from relocating to this new homeland, and he gave his life for the values that he believed in, for the country that accepted him, for the country that became his home. Today, Michael Strang is remembered both in the United States and in Slovakia, in his home village of Jarabina in eastern Slovakia, until today a Rusin village. So his hats off to Michael Strang, and a shout out to the Rusins. Andy Warhol, who is next, will not talk much about him because everybody knows Andy Warhol, another Rusin. He is an example of somebody who was actually born in the United States. All these previous gentlemen, they were born in Slovakia, moved to the United States at some point in their lives. Andy Warhol is a son of Rusin parents. His father, his father chose Andy's mother, Julia, to be his one and only bride. He rejected everybody else because he just wanted her. And she was charmed by this gentleman who was an American. So he had a previous experience of working in America. Then he came back to his home village in Eastern Slovakia dressed in the American beautiful suit. And she fell for him, as she would. They married. They had their first child. The husband, prior to the second, or just as First World War was breaking out, decided to return to America to support his growing family, because there was not that much he could do in Eastern Slovakia at the time, but also probably fleeing the conscription duty, as many young men did. They did not want to fight on the side or in the ranks of the Hungarian army, and they preferred to leave. So that's what happened. Julia stayed home. She had to endure the First World War in her hometown, but as soon as she was capable, she joined her husband in the United States. They settled down in Pittsburgh, and this is also where Andy was born. And it was his mother who had great love for Slovak or Rusin folklore, rather, for all the folk ways, for the magic that we find in folklore that shaped Andy's life and also career in the arts greatly. And the work of Andy Warhol revolutionized pop art, but not just pop art, it revolutionized art. It made art accessible to the masses. It really blurred the lines of what's considered fine art and what's not. It raised everyday objects into objects of art. As a son, as the first generation son of Rusin immigrants from Slovakia in the United States. Andy Warhol was raised in Pittsburgh in the Russian Valley, and this was a known neighborhood that attracted Rusins. So that imprint is also felt in his work, the immigrant experience. And last one, we'll end on high with Eugene Cernan, who is a grandson of, or was a grandson of, a Slovak immigrant. So it was his grandfather who left Slovakia, relocated to the United States. And Eugene Cernan is a prime example of what happened to the descendants of these immigrants. The family and Eugene himself is known as Gene, really grasped the opportunities that America offered and used that to rewrite history and to really propel himself to an unheard of success, making the American dream come true for him, excuse me. So Eugene Cernan was the last man to walk on the moon. Because there is no atmosphere on the moon, the footsteps of Eugene Cernan are still there. It was also the most successful of all the lunar missions. Together with his team, Eugene managed to collect the greatest amount of samples and other content for us to puzzle over and analyze and research. So Eugene Cernan is the proof that sky is not the limit, and that the children of immigrants and their grandchildren and great-grandchildren really use that immigrant experience as a springboard to jump into heights that were unthinkable, unheard of, unimaginable to his ancestors who left from the old country, who left Upper Hungary, who left Slovakia. Eugene Cernan, I'll end this here, spoke the famous words that also reflects the values of Slovaks, immigrants from Slovakia, that were greatly anchored in their faith and in God. So when he was leaving the moon, when the last mission was getting ready to return to the earth, he said, we leave as we came, and God willing, as we shall return with peace and hope for all mankind.
Bravo. Well, so yeah, Eugene is certainly the man that made it. That we there's a joke in Slovakia. He's one of us that made it the furthest.
Yes.
Slovak that made it the furthest. And as Gabby said, the sky is not the limit. So thank you for breaking that ceiling, Eugene. We really appreciate it. Now back to our book. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. We're going to open it up for some Q&A. We have about 10 minutes for that. So this is a wonderful opportunity. There's 46 of us on this call to open it up and see if you guys have any questions for us as the authors of the book. Neil, you're raising your hand, so please go ahead. You'll just need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So very quickly, just a little bit of background. I'm a newly minted Slovak citizen, dual citizen now. Along with my 2 adult daughters and my grandson, were all granted citizenship in Slovakia through by descent. And there's another story, which you didn't mention. There were many minority populations within this area of Slovakia, northern Hungary, including the Jews. And my ancestors were Jewish, and they emigrated, my grandmother in 1912, my grandfather in 1921. He came later because he was in the Austria-Hungarian army in World War I, and came 2 years after the war ended. And a very different story than the typical, sort of Western Pennsylvania coal miner, steel worker type stereotype, if you will, in that my research going back into Slovakia and into my ancestors, I discovered that my ancestors have been there at least 4 generations from the late 1700s, where they probably migrated from Moravia. And they were bakers. I have a historical record going back to 1810. My great-great-great-grandfather had a bakery in a little village called Zabokreki nad Nitro in Nitra. And then my great-great-grandfather was a baker. And then my grandfather, who came in 1921, along with my grandmother, who was already here, opened bakeries in Brooklyn. And so 4 generations of bakers. And this was fairly typical of Jews in these times, because they essentially became the merchants and the shoemakers and the bakers and the shopkeepers and butchers and so on, serving the Slovak population, who in those days, as you know, were largely serfs on Hungarian kingdom palaces and large homes. And so there's a whole sub-story, like the Rusin sub-story, of people who were not ethnically Slovak, but were Slovak, and came to America as well. Both my grandparents came through Ellis Island, but settled on the Lower East Side in a Jewish Slovak Hungarian enclave, where others spoke the language. And interestingly, my grandparents were, I found out later in life, were first cousins. And that was not all that unusual either, because there was nobody else really for them to marry. And so sometimes they married within their own families. And so I just wanted to mention that sort of whole vein of, sort of emigration history from Slovakia in these times. That was not the typical story of the factory worker, steel worker type immigrant.
Neil, thank you so much for sharing your story, and also congratulations on becoming a new Slovak citizen.
Thank you.
That's a real big feat, and I'm going to be sharing actually our email below if any of you on this call would like to take part of a consultation with us, personally with me, to see if you're eligible or not for citizenship like Neil. He didn't do actually a consultation with me, but in order to get to the status that Neil got to, because really it's a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of, so that you can forever also change the destiny of your family by rerouting it and reconnecting them with Europe and with Slovakia. Once you do become a citizen, for example, or your Neil's children or grandchildren became citizens, any children born to them after the fact will automatically also inherit Slovak citizenship. So this is a great way to do a great return back to Slovakia via the acquisition of citizenship, which is not just citizenship to Slovakia, but the entire European Union. Second point, Neil, he's absolutely right. Slovakia was ethnically diverse. There was a very strong Jewish presence, Jewish communities in the major cities, and they were certainly part of the merchant and entrepreneurial class. So they would have had a different destination experience when they would have come to the New World. It would have been quite rare for them to actually work in the coal mines and steel mills. That was very much designated for the farm hands, the farm workers, and not so common for the Jewish communities because they had a different skill set. There was also ethnic Hungarians living in Slovakia that were bilingual, speaking Slovak and Hungarian. And of course, as Gabriela covered in the Slovak American contribution piece of this webinar, two of the greatest Slovaks, celebrated Slovak Americans, are actually of Rusin, ethnic Rusin descent. So not ethnically Slovak, but rather Rusin, Slovak speaking Rusins. Rusin, they also spoke the mother tongue Rusin at home, but also spoke Slovak. So it's a very hybrid identity, Neil. I think you said it beautifully. They were Jewish, but they were also Slovak. So thank you so much for sharing that, and congratulations
welcome.
again to you
Thank
and your
you.
family.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions about the book to the authors, to Gabriela and I, or perhaps I'm not sure if Rebecca's still on the call with us.
Yeah, I'm still
Um,
here.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. Thanks for hanging in. She really, really, really did make some fantastic illustrations. So this book is definitely a keepsake. It's not something you just read and throw away. You're going to want to keep it in your home, and you're going to want to share it with your loved ones, also as a gift for birthdays, for purposes of education, for Christmas, etc. Unfortunately, this book will not be ready for Christmas, but it certainly will be ready in January, so 2026. And it's very significant because in January 2020, or the year 2026, America will be celebrating its 250th anniversary. And we wanted to use the across the ocean story to highlight the contribution Slovaks made to the American dream, to American history, to American innovation, as Gabriela so beautifully and eloquently covered earlier.
And also just to build on the story that Neil shared and to connect it to the story in across the ocean. Again, we won't say too much, but that is not just the story of leaving and departure, but also a story of reconnection and return. And this is the phenomenon that we are seeing more and more today. I would say is a greater interest in descendants to reconnect with their roots, but also travel to Slovakia, some even relocating to Slovakia with their entire families. This is the beginning of a brand new chapter for the country, for the families, and hopefully a source of great healing that happened when so many men, women, and children from Slovakia left and didn't manage to reconnect with their homeland, with their families, because of what was happening in the world. So now is the chance to heal those wounds, to return, to complete the circle in many ways.
Exactly.
Thank you, Neil.
Well said.
So we have room for one more question. Who would like to be the last one? Dennis?
It's not really a question. I just want to say how excited my grandfather, if he was still alive, would be about this book. I've told Gabrielle I've been writing stories about my grandfather and filling in the blanks with fictionalized accounts. And I know, Gabrielle, you and I talked about the idea that mules may have been involved, because my grandfather had to try twice, and I have to believe he had help from someone who knew how to get him to Hamburg. So thank you.
Thank
Mules
you,
being the coyotes, the smugglers that
Yeah.
Slovaks relied on to cross the border and get into Germany in order to board that boat and then come through Ellis Island. I saw in the comment, there was a comment about Castle Gardens. So Castle Gardens was the first destination point, but that was very quickly relocated to Ellis Island. That became the major center for immigration intake from Europe into the New World. So those 30 odd Europeans, 30 million Europeans came through, majority Ellis Island. Okay, with that
And
note,
if I can chip in a little thing, Dennis is also coming to Slovakia next week, so we're very much looking forward to meeting him, seeing him again, welcoming him and his family in the homeland. And we will be releasing, sorry, my English is slipping now, our tour dates for 2026 next week. So if you would like to get to know the country of your ancestors, perhaps you haven't been yet, perhaps you want a guide to help you really dive in and unravel the layers of history and family histories, then those tours are perfect for you. And in addition to those group experience, it's always intimate groups, so don't think of any mass tourism. These are intimate experiences, and we take great care in crafting them and then actually doing them. We'll have 2 next year, one in summer, one in autumn or fall. But also, if you do have families that would like to come over to Slovakia and you would like a special experience prepared just for you, perhaps visiting those ancestral places, this is possible too. We also do personalized family tours, and that's actually where our passion goes, because that's when we get to make the tours really meaningful for you and really tailored to you. So we're excited to welcome Dennis next week, and we hope to see many of you coming into Slovakia in the year to come.
Thank you. Indeed, the final, I would say, immersion step, if not citizenship, or before or after citizenship, is truly visiting the homeland of your ancestors, visiting the motherland of Slovakia. It's a deeply immersive, transformative, and rewarding experience. And Gabriela really crafts these tours with a lot of passion. She also has the training in this, having a master's in tourism. So she knows it on a heart level, what she wants to provide for you, but she also knows it on a conceptual and academic level of how to really give you that holistic Slovak immersion experience. Now, last comment here I saw, is it possible to pre-order the audiobook? Yes, it is. It's possible to pre-order the ebook. It's possible to pre-order the physical book. It's possible to pre-order 5 books. It's possible to order Across the Ocean and Slovak Settlers. It's possible to book a dinner with the authors. And it's also possible to just make a contribution and not get anything back. We greatly appreciate your support. If you want to support this webinar by donation, by contributing to the Kickstarter platform, we'll be very grateful for that. We'll also send a follow-up newsletter. So if you're not able to catch it in the chats, you can certainly click on the newsletter at your convenience. And yes, so that's all from me. So I'd like to hand it over to Gabriela.
Yes, so thank you very much for everyone joining us today to get to know this new project that we are so excited about, that we were humbled by as writers and also as publishers. Is a brand new thing for us, but the outcome is truly beautiful, and we trust that your children, your grandchildren, perhaps their beautiful illustrations in the book, will love it. You do have 48 more hours to pre-order the book, or to write your family name into the book and into the history, or to choose any of the other awards. And we are truly and genuinely thankful and grateful for all of you having the faith and trust in us and supporting this yet another book project, which is our sixth one. Yes,
It's our sixth one. Yes. And Rebecca, also thank you so much for joining us and for sharing a little bit about your journey and contributing. Rebecca, live from London in Movement.
Thank you guys. Thank you for letting me illustrate. It is my first big illustration project, so I'm really psyched about it. I put my heart and soul into these illustrations. I spend hours crafting them, Susanna knows. So Please purchase the book, support the good thing, learn about your ancestors. Let's go.
Let's go. So with that note, thank you so much. God bless, and looking forward to seeing your contributions and sending you a copy in January when the book is printed. Thank you so much. Děkujeme.
Děkujeme. Doviděnia.
Dovidenia.